So in this video, we'll take a closer look at this Fujitsu Esprimo PC that you can get right now, especially in Europe, relatively inexpensively. But first off, I do want to apologize for my voice because I'm still dealing with the cold, so my voice is maybe a little bit more strange than usual. But anyways, this specific model here is the mini form factor. You can actually get this with room for 2 CD drives at the front as well. And this one here comes with the 7th generation i5 7500, and I paid just around 120 euros for this one with 8 GB of memory and 256 GB of SSD. It is an NVMe SSD, so that's quite nice. And also for around the same price, I could either get this one with the 7th generation i5 or from another seller had actually an i3 9th generation, which is equivalent in terms of performance to this one. But I ended up going with this one because it does have the 80 platinum power supply, which the other one did not have, so it is a little bit more power efficient. And since I want to use this as a server, it's probably going to operate 24/7. I definitely do want the one that is a little less power hungry, and the i5 is enough for me. And for this one here, you can only go up to 7th generation. That is the latest this chipset can handle. So the maximum you can actually get inside this one is a quad-core 8-thread CPU. So of course that limits a little bit in terms of expandability, but I don't really plan to expand this, and the quad-core CPU is definitely fine enough for my need. I just plan to use this as a media server running on RAID. Anyways, let's just have a look around the case first. It has this plastic front, and in the front here we do have a 90mm fan, and this is something that is mandatory for this to operate, or at least you get a warning if you disconnect that. This specific one I got did have a DVD drive. Don't really care about that, so I'm probably just going to replace it with a hard drive caddy. You can also get this with a floppy disk drive and also a slim DVD drive as well. But this one, of course, does not have either of those. It does have a USB Type-C on the front, as well as some USB Type-A, some USB 2.0, some 3.0, and also a headphone and microphone in at the front. Power button does light up when you actually press it, but it is actually requiring a lot of force to actually turn it on. And that is not because there's anything wrong with this specific machine. It's just the design of the button. You have to press it pretty firmly to get that click or to turn it on. A little bit annoying. And we do also have a HDD activity LED right here on the front. A little bit annoying because it just keeps flashing whenever you are reading or writing to the hard drive. And it's quite bright as well. On the top part here we do have some information about the product. And you can see the model number here. This is the P957 or /E94 Plus, and the E94 Plus part means that this one have the more efficient power supply, so the 80 plus platinum power supply, and it is 94% efficient at around 50% of its usage, which is definitely very nice. But other than that, nothing really on the top here. We do have a made in Germany sticker here on the right side, but it's not really made in Germany. It's more like assembled in Germany. Maybe the case is made in Germany, but you can see when we open it up that a lot of the parts have Foxconn label on them, on the motherboard itself. So definitely not a motherboard that is made in Germany. On the back side, the graphics card is something I have added myself, so it was not included in the price. But since I just want to use this for streaming and transcoding and so on, I just got a NVIDIA Quadro P1000 in here. You can have those quite inexpensively, and they do still have the NVENC encoder and is it NVENC decoder, I believe. But anyways, we do have a 1 gig Intel NIC here on the back. Really like the fact that it's an Intel NIC. We do have some audio jacks here on the back as well, 3.5mm. We do have more USB-A's. These are just 3.0. We also have a DVI, and you can also spec this with a serial port if you have need for that. We do have a couple of display ports and a USB 2.0 on the top here, as well as legacy keyboard and mouse input as well, which can be kind of handy since this one has the platinum power supply. We do have the monitor out, as well as of course power in. So that's kind of a nice feature, so you don't really have to use 2 power outlets at the power socket. You can just plug in your monitor directly to the power supply, and it will turn on and off the monitor. When the computer is turned off, it will turn the monitor completely off as well to save a little bit of standby power. And you can see the screws here. There are like 5 in total. You can actually unscrew those and pull out this entire tray. So you can remove the motherboard very easily. You don't have to unscrew it inside the case. You can remove it from the case and then, do your work there. So that's definitely a nice feature. There's room for 2 fans here on the back. I actually thought these was like 80mm fans. Wasn't really specified in the manual, so I was kind of hoping I could use some of the 80mm I have lying around that I'm not really using, but unfortunately this does use very strange 70mm fan sizes on the back here, so Noctua doesn't make any of those sizing, and not really that many do. I guess you could adapt this to like 80mm or maybe fit a 60mm on there, but definitely a little bit cumbersome that it doesn't support like just standard 80mm fans on the back. Would have been nice. We do have 4 slots here on the back as well, and there is also PCI Express slots on the motherboard, and the entire case is also toolless, which is kind of nice. Anyways, look around the bottom there, we do have some rubber feet, of course, and some more information there on the sticker. But this case is not designed to lay down on the side, which would be nice, but you can of course just do so anyways. On the right side, we just have the Fujitsu logo, and this side is not removable. It is permanently attached, you can see there, to the case. So it's only really meant to be operational from the left side here, and the entire case is actually toolless. So not only can you open the side door just by opening this latch here, very easy to get inside. All the other stuff, except for the motherboard tray, is also toolless. So if you want to install something inside the PCI Express slots here, you can just undo it here, remove the little protector there, and then just plug in whatever kind of PCI Express device. And once done, of course, just plug it in place again like so, and actually just hold the cards in place quite well. But you can still also attach the screw if that's something you want to do. Of course, if you want to be 100% sure it doesn't go anywhere, there's still room for a screw. So that's kind of a nice little design detail. The same goes for the optical drive, or whatever kind of drive you have in here. Both this one and the one above it. You can see there's a little latch there for that slim drive, but also this one. Pull it towards the back, and you can just slide the drive out of the front here and pull it out very easily. And if you want to get it back in place, of course, just click it back in place like so. And it's held pretty well in place there. Very nicely designed, in my opinion. You do also have room for 2 3.5-inch hard drives here at the bottom. You do only get 1 set of these adapters here. See, they have actually a little bit of dampening material on them, so could probably stop some vibration. And again, very easy and toolless. Just kind of slide in place until it clicks in, and then you have attached the hard drive again. But like I said, only 1 set of these were included, even though there is like power for both of them already pre-attached here, or ready to go. You can kind of find these on eBay relatively inexpensively, but would have been nice that it had like 2 sets of these included. Can also very easily open the front just by opening those little latches there on the inside, so you can clean it out on the front as well. So I think overall this is a very nicely designed case actually. Like I said, the GPU was not included. That's just something I've added in. And for this specific model here, we do have 2 PCI Express ×1s. On the inside there, we do have 1 PCI Express ×16 physical, but only ×4 wired or electrically. And this one also is only PCI Express ×2, or PCI Express Generation 2 rather. And then we have the full ×16 slot here that I have hooked up my graphics card to, which is also of course ×16 electronically, and PCI Express Generation 3 like the 2 other ×1s as well. See down here in the corner, we do have the PCI Express NVMe SSD. This one comes with a Samsung 256GB variant, and I believe it can handle both PCI Express SSDs and also SATA SSDs. And then we have that 90mm fan in the front, which is actually attached to the case with some rubber screws or attachments, so it will dampen the vibrations a little bit. None of these fans are really all that great. Something I will probably replace in the future, and it is very easy to do so. It's just standard PWM header here on the motherboard, so just get any PWM fan, preferably a Noctua fan, and you will be good to go. The same goes for the CPU cooler. Just standard PWM, and this is just a standard bracket for the CPU or CPU cooler, so you could replace this pretty easily. I believe it's just standard sizing or distance between the screw holes. I'm not going to take it off again because I've already taken it off and cleaned it and changed the thermal compound as well with something fresh. It was very dry, so definitely a good thing to do. One definitely nice thing about this system is that it is actually semi-passive, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I did see it in the instructions before I actually bought it, but I didn't really know that it applied to all of the fans. So both the fans in the PSU, CPU, and the case fan will all stop spinning once the temperature hits below a certain point. And of course, they will just continuously stop spinning unless the CPU or the motherboard reaches a certain temperature. Then either the case fan or the CPU fan or the, of course, PSU fan will turn on. So that's kind of a nice little feature that you can have a completely silent system, at least up until a certain point of temperature or until you push it to a certain point, where it will, of course, either need to cool the PSU, the CPU, or the motherboard, or the components inside the case. That's actually quite a nice system, I think. But if you, for instance, wanted to disconnect the front fan, which I had to do on the other one because I bought two of these, the other one I got did come with a hardware failure or hardware fault where the front fan would just turn on and continuously ramp up until it was at its highest RPM, which for this fan here is 3500 RPM. So very, very loud, and will just stay on that RPM the entire duration of the time the PC is turned on. So of course I wanted to disconnect that fan, and the computer does work without it, but every time I turn it on I'll just get an error telling me that the front fan is faulty, and I had to actually physically press a button for the computer to turn on, which is definitely not ideal if you want to use this in a server environment. Kind of nice that they will tell you that the fan is not working, but the fact that you have not only to have a monitor on to actually see that fault, but also that you have to press a keyboard key, just press enter to continue, definitely not ideal. So you kind of need the fans to all be working for this machine to just turn on headless without you actually have to interact with anything. So you don't have the option to use it without the front fan or the CPU fan. So that could be an inconvenience for some if you just want to run this without a front fan, for instance. But in reality, if you have like hard drives connected here and also have a GPU and plan to connect a network card here as well, it's definitely nice to have some fresh air in from the front, just blowing over these components. And ideally, it would be nice to have a little fan here on the back, just sucking some of the hot air out, even though the power supply, of course, will do some of that work. But I think it's kind of nicely designed, this motherboard here, because you can see here, we do have power out from the motherboard itself to those two SATA drives here at the bottom. Quite convenient for cable management, and also the two SATA data connectors is also tucked away down there right next to the power outlet. That's kind of a neat little design feature, I think. The same goes over here. If I can just not get my camera to focus, but you can see there, we do have the power out from the motherboard, so it makes it very easy to cable manage. Maybe it doesn't really make as much sense here on the top because it's right next to the power supply, but you get all the power cables included, which is not something you always get with like these pre-built systems. If you don't get them with like the hard drives and DVD drives and so on, sometimes you do not get these cables included. But you can see here, we do have 3 power cables or power plugs on this one. Of course, the top one is already connected to the top optical disk drive, the slim one up here, so you can just pop one in if you want to. But I think that's a nice little design feature. But of course, that also means you cannot really use another power supply than the one specifically built for these systems, because it doesn't use a standard 24-pin plug, and we don't have that 4-pin plug for the CPU as well, so everything goes in here. I believe the one next to it is actually for monitoring the fan RPM, because you can actually, inside the BIOS, see the speed or the rotation speed of the fan in the PSU. And you can see the bottom side there. I do have the 80 Platinum power supply, which is definitely very nice. So quite efficient little system here. My unit did come with one 8 gig stick. So the another one here is actually from the other machine that is defective. I have moved over here. The seller told me he will ship me a new system, or a new used system, and I could just keep the other one, so that's definitely a good service. We also have this little 3-pin connector here on the motherboard, if we can just get the camera to focus. But I believe that one is actually for the case intrusion sensor, which is not included with this one. So all in all, I think it's actually quite well laid out, this little system. For me personally, I will have 3 times 3.5-inch drives and 2 times 2.5-inch SSDs. And this way I can run a on-RAID server, just have 1 parity disk, the one in the front maybe, and 2 data disks, and then have 2 cache disks as well. Power-wise, this server draws just shy of 15 watt, just idling, doing nothing. and that's including the GPU as well, and that is with the display on, running Windows 11. So I would say that is fairly efficient for a quad-core CPU. I saw some guy online actually drilling 8 holes here in the side panel, and then had 2 3.5-inch hard drives just screwed directly into the side panel, and that actually looked to be working quite well. So of course, when you open it up, you will have your 2 hard drives just sitting here on the side, and closing it down there, it will actually, I think, work quite well. That's definitely also one way of doing it. If you want like 5 3.5-inch hard drives, you can actually have that in here, no problem. And these systems here from Fujitsu, they usually go for less here in Europe because they're not really in as high of the demand as the Optiplex ones from Dell, which of course have been featured in so many YouTube videos for like easy and cheap gaming builds. So you can still have these systems relatively cheap, and they are very easy to upgrade and work on. As you can see, there is pretty standard case layout, but completely toolless. So yeah, I personally really like this small case. This is of course the mini tower. They also have a midi tower version, which is a little bit bigger than this one here. But the fact that it is so easy to work on, completely toolless, very standard layout inside. You have a lot of options to upgrade as well, or expand, not only in terms of hard drives, but also you have some PCI Express slots down here to work with. It's efficient. It is fairly silent as well. When the fans come on, of course, these are very cheap fans, all of them, also in the power supply and the front fan here. If you really want to go all the way, you could, of course, mod all of these and replace them with some Noctua fans. I'm sure it's worth it for the price of this machine, but definitely they are audible when they come on. But of course, it does have that semi-passive mode where it does turn off after a period of time, or when the temperature gets below a certain threshold. You have to push the system somewhat to actually get these fans spinning. And I suppose if you upgrade like this CPU cooler, for instance, to a bigger Noctua or better quality one that's also more silent, it will also be longer in between it actually turning on, because it will probably supply better heat dissipation from the CPU. One annoyance with these systems here, I don't really understand why. Why don't they just use a standard layout for the motherboard and standard pin out for like the PSU and so on? Because if the PSU does go bad, you kind of have to outsource another one that will fit into the system, or maybe you can like make an adapter cable to adapt 24 pin to this 16 pin plug to the motherboard, because that's probably the hardest thing to actually get a hold of is the power supply. Probably a lot of them out there on eBay and so on, or you can just buy a even cheaper than this one PC that has a power supply that will fit, because the power supply is the only thing except for the motherboard that doesn't really have standard fittings. You know, you can just replace the CPU if that goes bad, hard drive, the GPU, RAM and so on, SSD, easy to replace, as well as the fans. But the power supply and the motherboard are of course proprietary. So yeah, I will definitely recommend these systems if, of course, this is what you're looking for. Maybe building a cheap little gaming PC, throwing either a bus-powered GPU in here, or maybe you could actually just throw a class or 2 above this, and then just adapt some of those SATA cables or SATA plugs into a PCI Express power adapter for the GPU. The PSU in here, I forgot to mention that, is a 280 watt. So of course that would limit a little bit what you can do, but you should still be able to get some gaming out of this. Or if you, like me, just want to build a little cheap, low-powered streaming box that can handle a lot of transcoding, and also plan to run a TDAR server as well. So I want to transcode all of my media to H.265 just to save some space on the hard drive. I think this form factor is excellent as well. Would have been nice if it was like a little more standard sizing fan on the back. 80 millimeters would have been excellent. 70 millimeters, you just don't see those. So that's a little unfortunate, but I'm not really sure I really need it. So yeah, definitely highly recommend it. Either if you get this one with the 7th generation CPUs, or you can get the newer one with the newer chipset that can go all the way up to like the 9th generation CPUs. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those. And like I said, you can get them still quite inexpensively, because they're not really as popular as some of the other ones out there from other manufacturers, and also that these are mainly available in Europe, because yeah, Fujitsu is a German brand. So if you live in Europe, I think definitely this should be high on your list if you are looking into repurposing a used PC like this. But anyways, in this video I just wanted to take you through all the hardware, layout of this case and motherboard, so you know what you're getting into if you are buying one of these systems here. I couldn't really find that much information on this specific models here online. Of course, I will share some affiliate link down in the description below if you are interested. But else, that's pretty much all I have for this video. Until next time, take care.